most respected audience, friends, comrades, and my dear students. A very good day to you all. Today, I seek to introduce you a very great historian by name M.X. Miranda. He was our teacher at Loyola College. He got retired from service long back and he was a visiting professor and engaging young minds without rest. Apart from teaching students of Loyola College, he was also actively engaged in teaching students aspiring for civil services. At the outset, I should thank the Department of History of Loyola College for still remembering his contributions and having conducted an endowment lecture in 2021, inviting eminent professors like G.J. Sudhakar and Dr. Bernardi Sami. He hailed from Manapad, presently a very famous tourist spot and part of Thuthukudi district. Earlier, it was part of Tirunelveli district. Among the fisherman community, Mirandas are a significant section that we have a work by name Mirandas of Manapad itself. Names like Miranda, Baldona, Fonseca, etc. are given by Portuguese sailors who served 500 years before as godfathers when they converted to Christianity. So, Manapad is a place of rich Christian tradition and trade. When I was making a field visit at Veerapandiyan Pattanam, one man said that go to Manapad, you will find windows being imported from Sri Lanka for decorating the houses. It prompted me to visit Manapad, and no doubt it's a beautiful town, and later it was used widely by cinema directors such as Mani Ratnam and others. Roman Catholic rituals at that time were performed in Latin language, and therefore it was only natural for Professor Miranda to have had the exposure of Latin language at a very young age. So, exposure to a foreign language at a very early age must have impacted him severely and must have widened his ideas. Importantly, he is one of the twins and he is named Xavier Miranda, and I do not know the name of his twin brother. Manapad had a wonderful learning environment and it had already produced one Mr. Diaz who was part of Imperial Police and was founder member of the Indian Police Academy at Hyderabad. Deriving inspiration from such people, M.X. Miranda was a very brilliant student and he aspired to become a teacher. Yet, among his hobbies, he was also involved in drama acting. He did his B.Ed course at that time BT at St. Xavier's College, Palayam Kottai, and very famous teacher Anthony Pichai taught him. Later, Professor Anthony Pichai's illustrious son, Professor Cleophas, was student of M.X. Miranda when he was serving in Loyola College. However, until the age of 36, Professor Miranda was a school teacher and he was a brilliant writer even when he was serving at school. And he had proficiency in both the languages, that is Tamil and English. And he produced a wonderful book, and that was a biography of Winston Churchill. And that book is still available in Amazon and it is widely rated and it has been awarded 5 stars by the readers. A mere MA is sufficient to get appointment into a college at that time. But however, the inquisitive mind of M.X. Miranda landed him in pursuing PhD from C.J. Nirmal, who was his guide. Though younger in age to M.X. Miranda, C.J. Nirmal efficiently guided his PhD thesis and M.X. Miranda learnt the research language thoroughly, and his classes contained lectures which had thoroughly researched language. However, M.X. Miranda did not stop with the PhD. His search for knowledge made him apply for Fullbright fellowship and he was awarded that, and he spent 1 year of his life at the United States of America with fellowship. After returning from America, M.X. Miranda in most of his theses used the titles in American fashion. That is, there will be a main topic with a connected subtopic, whereas in some other states they merely say that history of this country, history of a school, so on and so forth. But as far as M.X. Miranda is concerned, there will be a main topic like history of Kolachal, for instance, colon the study of Kolachal uprising with special reference to 1948, like that. After returning from America, his gesture became very formal and he was wearing coats and suits to the college regularly. He had an updated knowledge and he was a member of the Kanimura library, and he never hesitated to give his library card for his students to benefit from the library where books are regularly updated. Interestingly, one student from Bihar, he came to Chennai to study AMIE program, and he had a natural interest for history, and he took the guidance of Professor M.X. Miranda and registered for a BA program in the Indira Gandhi National Open University. And this fellow used the card of Professor M.X. Miranda and equipped himself thoroughly in the field of history. And after completing his BA, he applied for MA course at Loyola College. Since his degree is being awarded by an open university, Loyola College rules did not permit for his enrollment, but shortly he got admission into Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi. He continued to remain a brilliant student even at Delhi, and he was also part of the Students' Union. And he owes all his success to Professor Miranda. In fact, while Professor Miranda was serving at Loyola College, it had only an undergraduate course. Yet he had personal interest in research and he constantly equipped himself. As I said already, Manapad was a very famous center of Christianity and spiritualism. It is believed that a piece of Jesus' cross, that is the cross where Jesus was crucified, it came via the ocean and reached Manapad, and it is protected by the priests of the region. For others, it may be a myth, but for Professor Miranda, it was a subject for research, and therefore he conducted his research on the originality of the cross, and he brought out certain results accepted by the clergy themselves. His engagement with research is constant, although he worked in an undergraduate college. He is an expert in teaching historiography. He regularly read newspapers of both the languages and corrected essays in which dissertations could be written. He issued such newspapers to the students who did not have any idea about the research topic. According to him, a research should be made on a problematic theme, and one has to identify the problem from the essays that has been given for reading. Once the problem is identified, the guide has to be convinced insofar this problem can be converted into a thorough dissertation. Once the consensus is arrived, then the next step is to collect the secondary sources. How other scholars have handled this research problem will be the question for the guide and the candidate. Thereafter, Professor Miranda will insist upon collecting primary sources. All these are merely pilot study, and the major work has to follow. Once the pilot study is completed, A thorough bibliography has to be collected. Professor Miranda adapted the postcard method, according to which one has to buy plain white cards from the stationery store and has to visit the library and enter the name of the author with last name first and initials and second name following that, and in the middle there will be the name of the book, and at the corner, right corner, there will be the details of the publishers as well as date. These days the system has been made easier, and if you open the internet and Google, you will find similar items in Google Scholar. So today you can follow easily Google Scholar and enter the name of the authors you wish to follow, and also their book names and the publication date. But in those days, not everybody followed the postcard method, but Professor Miranda strongly insisted this so that a command over the secondary sources could be made, because hypothesis is very important, and the problem that is not solved by a writer is the hypothesis for the next book, according to him. Thereafter, he insisted on writing the introduction in the right format. It should begin with the statement of the problem, followed by rationale of the study. One has to clearly understand the problem of research, and he has to express that in the first paragraph of a research. And nextly, he has to justify why such research has to be done. Furtherly, he has to clearly mark the boundaries of the research, that is what is said in area of the study, followed by review of literature. Reviewing of literature includes the very important books, works, and primary sources. While completing the discussion on that, one has to explain the scope and limitation, followed by hypothesis. In postmodern theory of persons like Derrida, they tend to say that there will be inconsistency in writing, but Professor Miranda insisted a strict format to be followed so that inconsistency in writing could be vastly avoided. After scope and limitation, he insisted on writing the hypothesis. This is a very important part according to Professor M.X. Miranda. He identified that as the heart of the thesis. In some of the universities, they adapt only one hypothesis for research in history. But as far as Professor M.X. Miranda is concerned, for his MA project itself, he gave 3 or 4 hypotheses for inquiry and arrive at conclusion. As said already, without a thorough understanding of the subject matter in which we are researching, one cannot evolve a hypothesis. And in review of literature, one could efficiently identify the methodology adopted by various other writers and the suitable methodology that has to be adopted by the researcher himself. Professor Miranda never encouraged students writing that I am stating myself, so on and so forth. He always insisted on mentioning oneself as the present researcher. Usually, Professor Miranda does not interfere in the aspect of methodology, because some people have their own ideology which they convert into methodology, and he gave complete independence in formulating the methodology, but it should be convincing in research terms. After methodology, he always expected a thorough scheme of chapterization. There will be a main topic and subtopic, and this scheme of chapterization should reflect those themes mentioned in the heading of the thesis. All the elements mentioned in the hypothesis should be dealt in the chapters, and in conclusion, you have to argue whether the hypothesis has been proved or not according to Professor M.X. Miranda. Therefore, with writing introduction, 90% of the thesis is over. That is what eminent filmmaker Satyajith used to say. With the writing of script, he used to say that 90% of the work is over and we have to go for shooting the scenes. Similar is the approach of Professor M.X. Miranda. With conclusion of introduction, 90% of the blueprint has been already made and only a writing based on elaborating on what has been mentioned in the introduction has to be done. Fortunately for my MA dissertation, he was my guide. At that time, we were made to visit a village called Vallibram, located in Chengalpattu district. He travelled along with us to Vallibram. After landing in the village, he made us walk through the village and called all of us to assemble at a particular place. He requested every one of us to select a topic, but he said that you should not choose certain vague topics such as political system of Vallibram village, economic system of Vallibram village, social system and religion and the like. There should be a minute aspect which you have to select and you have to expand on it. In my case, I chose impact of media in Vallibram village and he did not discourage that. In fact, while teaching historiography paper, he gave a mini dissertation like writing and he expected all of us to have footnotes on that. But in my case, I did not attend the class on that day and therefore I gave my assignment without footnotes and he was highly infuriated by my lethargic behavior and therefore he threw the paper on my face and he said that you have copied these from some book and I am not convinced with your writing. And that is true actually. Usual assignments are written as such, but he expected us to produce original work and therefore I went back and as he referred, I took the assignment of Brother Ananias Tete and I followed his methodology and that is the beginning of my research life. He never encouraged using of sweeping sentences and there will be every single word related to the research only and if at all there is one addition, there will be a huge deletion from the side of my guide, that is Professor M.X. Miranda. Our class is filled with sportsmen and very average students and these sportsmen and average students, they relied upon my scholarship and every one of them is saying to Professor Miranda that I am helping them. Professor was not happy about that. Similarly, he was unhappy when the batch of our students were about to visit a cricket match leaving the class and while he came in front of us, everybody said, "Sir, today we are going for a cricket match." He just smiled and left us. And after our returning on the next day, he personally summoned me and severely scolded and disciplined me. Coming back to the historiography experiment, he scolded me stating that you are helping every one of them, but finally you are going to lose your own work. When are you going to submit your thesis? He asked. Sir, I will submit next day, I said. He was surprised and he said that, okay, let me see. I, in the very early morning, went to his home and submitted, and he did not expect that. My early visit by 6 a.m. irritated his wife, but Professor Miranda encouraged my visit and he received my paper and he did not find any fault in my writing and therefore he did not speak about that subject anymore. But before my thesis could be brought to print, My mother was affected severely of cancer and I have to leave for Tirunelveli. And I said this to Professor Miranda, and he immediately said that you please leave immediately. I will make one of your classmates to print the thesis and work for you. And according to his command, I immediately left for Tirunelveli, and he made Ranjit, who is presently inspector of police and a close friend of mine, to print the thesis 4 copies and submit on my behalf on the perfect date of submission. I always thought that I am in the bad books of Professor M.X. Miranda, but on the day of Viva Voce, he introduced me to the external examiner with glowing words, and I am perfectly shocked to learn that whether professor is having such a great opinion about me. And he awarded me good marks in the internal examination, and the external examiner gave better marks, and it made me come out with first mark in the dissertation. His strict behavior with persons like me may project him as a very serious person. Rather, he is a man of great sense of humor. If someone asks, Sir, how you came to this college, he would say that I came by bus number 11. It means he came by foot. He once said that one student was about to write an answer and he was sitting without writing it. When asked why he is not writing, he said, Sir, it cannot be written, it can be only said. And what is the question? They asked. Sir, it is changing the voice. And how you are going to mention that? He said, the question is Rama killed Ravana. Now I am going to change the voice. And he said, Rama killed Ravana. Exactly in same tone he used to express these kinds of jokes. And once he also stated that one student was asked to translate a particular sentence. The sentence is, he underwent several hardships, and the student translated this as, அவன் பல கஷ்ட கப்பல்களுக்கு உள்ளே சென்றான். Similarly, one student was asked to write about the achievements of Ashoka in 4 lines. He wrote, Ashoka achieved several things as the first sentence. In the second sentence, there are hardly any person who has achieved like King Ashoka. The third sentence is, none achieved fame like Ashoka. The fourth sentence is, there are no words to mention the achievements of Ashoka. And the 4 sentences are completed, and now the student is expecting full marks. He recommended job for several of our students, and when my mother died, I do not know from where he collected my address, and he wrote a wonderful touching letter to me, and before I could reply, he passed away. Often he used to say that I am a person half put on grave and a person who is waiting to kick the bucket. But his life remained a meaningful one for historical research and students like us who expect him to have lived more. So, with this brief introduction, I conclude my lecture on Professor M.X. Miranda. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.